Hello, and welcome back to the Pipe and Coffee Book Club. Today we're going to do one of our landmark series, and the year we're going to look at is 1854. So get ready for this. I am going to talk about a pipe first. This is a giant pipe. This is an Orlik Flying Saucer, which is not an easy one to find. It's not that, and here I go, see a little close. It's not one that I'm really thinking is broadly distributed or has ever been broadly distributed. It's a big pipe. I mean, look at it in my hand. It's got a big chamber. It's not one you're going to walk around with clenching or hanging from your mouth. But it's one of my favorite pipes to sit on the patio and enjoy a long smoke, because it doesn't, I mean, it's almost impossible to get hot, right? I usually have an English blend with this because of the large bowl. It's not as crazy deep as some others. I guess it kind of looks a little bit on the side. There are a couple of marks here, the ones that go around the bowl, that's kind of reminiscent of a Rhodesian or a bulldog. Oval shank, really big pipe. I saw this one on an auction site and was able to pick it up, and then I saw a smooth later, and I wasn't able to win that one. If I see them, I will grab them. They're not going to fit in your pocket. They're not going to fit in your pipe pouch. They're cumbersome, but I think they're interesting, and I really like this one. I would like to find a smooth. I think this amount of surface area, if there was some bird's eye, would lend itself to making a very beautiful pipe. I don't know when these things were made. There's very little information on these. I'm assuming sometime in the 70s. That's there were a lot of Orliks around then. I don't know. It's a fun pipe. One of my favorites to just kind of hang out with, but probably something worth, if you see one, pick it up. You're not going to see many of them. Flying Saucer, Orlik. So, 1854. What was going on in 1854? Well, there actually was, specific to that year, there was something important going on in pipes, and there was something very important going on in literature. For coffee, the 1850s in general was probably one of the, it is probably more important than just the one date. So in the 1850s, that's when the brand Folgers actually kind of started. I know how we feel about those, but that was the first wave that put coffee in people's homes in the United States. Okay, it was ground coffee that was distributed. It started to become more personal. Coffee became a personal thing around this time. And I'm speaking very much about the United States. This is when it started gaining momentum. Now, it was around in France. It was around in Italy. It was strong throughout the world. And it was even strong in the United States at that time. But the 1850s really marked a point where we started seeing mass distribution of coffee. And that's really all I can say specifically for this time period. Now, there was something very important that happened in pipes. Paradigm shift. Change in what we consider a pipe to be. Okay? Prior to this date or this year, the majority of tobacco pipes were made of clay or meerschaum. This was the year, 1854, that the company that was that founded the family that founded Camoys and Chacombe started making pipe from briar. Okay, and you hear the word briar a lot, and my undergraduate degree included forestry, so so thinking about the actual wood and the plant really kind of is personal to me, and from a resource standpoint as well, right? When you think, man, there's a lot of pipes, but in reality, there's a lot more wood going into houses and things like that. Not briar, but from a global scale, I guess while there's a whole lot of pipes being made, it's probably not going to result in the extirpation of a species. Now, with that said, when you think of briar, at least when I think of briar growing up, I think of like sticker bushes, right? I think, and this may be the way we all were in the United States in the South. A briar patch was a patch of vines that had a lot of stickers on them, and if you went through there, you got tore up. It cut your pants. You'd be digging stickers out of your legs for a while. But that's not what briar is. In fact, briar is a tree heath. At least what we're talking about here. It's in the heath family. And the part of the pipe, or the part of the tree that's used for pipes, is a root ball, which is at the transition between the roots and the stem. There is often a swelling that has the really cool grain that we typically expect to see, that has the surface that sometimes you'll see on natural pipes, and it occurs around the Mediterranean region, all around the Mediterranean. So this is why you see like Grecian briar, Algerian briar. You see briar from all around, because there's a lot of countries around there, and some may be better than others. I think a lot of times, since it is one species, it's going to depend, much like we see with coffee, your product depends a lot on the growing, what's going on in the growing season, how much water is available all the time, temperatures, all these different factors could influence the quality of the briar. I think oftentimes, though, when you have these different countries saying that their briar is the best, that's probably more of there's probably really good briar in all of those, right? And there's probably bad briar in all of them. So that's probably a little bit of a boast. The other thing I find interesting is, it just so happened in 1854, a family that made pipes in St. Claude, France, started using this tree, and it had really good properties, right? So it is very fire and burn resistant. It's a hardwood. It's easy to use. It's easy to shape. It lasts a long time. It's very rot resistant. Okay, there's a lot of good properties there. There's a lot of trees all around the world that has those same properties. So it's interesting to me that we have such a limited number of different types of wood pipes that we manufacture from. I suspect that is primarily due to tradition, more than the fact that there's not a lot of different types of woods out there. I think this was just the first one that they really hit on. I think it did a really good job, and we all like the grain. We like the nostalgia and all of that goes along with a briar pipe. So that was the big innovation in 1854. We went from having pipes that were based in abiotic, right? They were based in things that were made of minerals. So the meerschaum pipe and the clay pipe were mineral based. The clay pipe had a lot of them. People still use clay pipes. But I really think what we would consider a pipe changed when when we started making out of wood. Tobacco still smoked out of it, right? But it became a piece of, for me at least, it became a piece of art. I'm sure certainly Meerschaum is worthy of the term art, right? But I have a little special place in my heart for small little things made out of wood. And like I said before, I would collect pipes even if I didn't smoke pipes. And it's because I consider them all a little piece of artwork and a nice little thing made out of, made out of a wood in a very traditional manner. So that's pipes, 1854. Doesn't really seem like a long time ago, right? So what happened in literature in 1854? Well, one of the most influential authors published his most influential book, and that's Henry David Thoreau. So Henry David Thoreau was an abolitionist. He was a transcendentalist. He believed in civil disobedience. He believed in going against unjust government, fighting unjust rules. One of those big ones being slavery, right? So Henry David Thoreau was a very interesting man that was well ahead of his time in the way that he thought. He's also a naturalist, and he enjoyed being out and living a simple life, living in the forest, which the book that he published in 1854 is Walden, right? And it's about the time he spent living near Walden Pond. And this, what this represented in the entire book was about how he went out into a more rural area. He built a house, a small house, and he spent an entire year living out there. The book goes through interactions with neighbors, interactions with the natural world, and really just spoke on a simpler way of living. And he used this as throughout the rest of his life. This was kind of a philosophy that he carried through all the rest of his writings. One of the, he spent some time in jail for going against what he believed to be unjust rules. He spoke out vehemently against slavery. Probably was one of our most vocal abolitionists, at least in that time. Now this was all happening in Massachusetts, so he was well above the Mason-Dixon line. Very well could have been, while he was probably persecuted for some of his beliefs, he very well could have been killed for some of his beliefs earlier, or if he would have been a little further south. So it's interesting to me that a lot of the same ethics of living in the forest and living a simpler life, and a lot of these same things that we saw throughout most of people in the 19th century. They shared a lot of very common things, and then Civil War came along, right? And it showed that just a couple of differences could drive people apart that otherwise had the same basic ideals. And Thoreau, if you read Walden, if you read Civil Disobedience, if you go through and read the entire Thoreauvian tome, you'll see an interesting way of thinking, and I recommend that you do that. Later on in life, he primarily wrote naturalist writings, right? So he wrote about different trees. He wrote about different plants. He wrote about things in the forest a lot more than he did social issues. But it all really kind of started with Walden, and I recommend that you read that book. It's not a long read, but 1854 gave us big changes. It again, it's bringing coffee into the homes of people in America. We see in St. Claude them starting to carve this wood that comes from the top part of this root of a heath tree, and we call it briar, and it makes really beautiful pipes and long, pipes that you'll have for a long time, and really changed the way we envisioned the pipe. And then Thoreau started writing very thoughtful commentary, starting with the publication of Walden. So I hope you enjoy these. I hope it's not like you're getting some lecture from some boring professor. But I find different years that I can, just different periods in time. It's interesting to me to see what all's going on in the world at different points in history. So at least in these three elements of interest that I have with, pipes, coffee, and literature, this was a good year to kind of reflect on what was happening in the early 1850s, knowing what's coming down the pike, especially with the ideas that Thoreau was discussing with abolition and government, going against the government in peaceful ways. I think it's worth reflecting on history. And these, there's history to everything, and there's history here in these hobbies. So don't want to be boring. I'm gonna cut it off here, and I hope you have a good week.